Hey guys, welcome back to the Kind of an Expert podcast, the only podcast where the guest picks the topic of every single episode. My name is Corey Tyndall, and as always, I am your host. And this week, I sat down with New York City comedian Emily Walsh to talk about working in TV. Emily is a set painter, a set designer for various TV shows, theater productions. So we talk about that. Also a random haunted house, which was an interesting story. Either way, it's very interesting. She's worked on some really cool shows like Succession and a lot of cop shows. So if you watch those, maybe you'll be able to see some of her work in those episodes. Then we finish it off talking about the writer's strike, what this is going to mean for TV, how that all works. So if you're at all interested in what's going on, the future of media, the future of TV, you're going to love this episode. Follow her at The Funny Walsh on Instagram and check out her podcast called Yeet the Rich, which is her and her husband talking about all of the despicable things that the ultra wealthy have done throughout history. It's a very fun podcast. You're going to like it. Follow me at Corey T Comedy on all social media. And if you're in New York City, check out Ope, a comedy show every single week at Ferns in the East Village. As always, please remember to rate, review, like, share, subscribe to the podcast. And with that, let's get into the episode. Done that before. Oof. Where it's luckily the camera's doing audio as well, so
right.
it'll be there. I can make it an MP3 or whatever. It's just not great quality. What was worse is over the pandemic when it was separate, we weren't doing Zoom because it wasn't long enough, so I would have them record just on their iPhone, just like set up the recorder thing and then send it to me, and I would use that recording. And there was a couple times that they forgot to hit record on their end. So I just had an hour of my audio, and that was it.
Just you and some pauses.
Yep. We redid a whole podcast one time. It was a good time.
I don't think I've ever had to do that, although I did lose an entire episode once with somebody, and I've never brought it up to them because I felt bad, and I was like, I'm not going to make you do this again because this was my fault. But it was like in the worst part of the pandemic when we were all just really dumb, when just no brain power was happening, and I was like, I don't even know what I did. I know I had the recordings. They're gone. I don't know.
It happens. It's like backups. That's all I could say. Backups. If you're doing a podcast, fucking backups.
Back up everything in your life.
I've deleted so many episodes on accident and then had to thank God, or piece it together, whatever. How long have you been podcasting?
So I have two podcasts, and the first one that I started alone at lunch, which is talking to comedians, is about 3 years old, a little over 3 years. We started it. I broke my elbow right before COVID. So I was not doing my day job because it's a physical day job. And I was kind of just sitting around my apartment, and it was a very severe break. It wasn't a casual, I can kind of do things break. So I was just what can I do? And I was still doing shows, but they were harder to get to. And I was this is finally the time that every comedian reaches at some point in their life of, should I start a podcast?
You got to start a podcast. Yeah. Yep.
So the first 5 episodes were right before COVID. We recorded them in person a week or two before, and we are people are coming into my apartment, and if you go back and listen, it's and it's also kind of fun because the first comedians we had were some of the more famous ones that have come out of it. We're episode I think 3, we're talking to Jay Jordan, and we're should we go grocery shopping? Have you been to Costco? What's this gonna be like?
It'll be over by May.
Yeah, no big deal. And it's just such a bizarre time capsule. And then we went virtual for a while, and then we were back in person, and then my co-host moved to Washington DC, so now we're back to virtual. But
okay,
yeah, it's been a journey.
But I think we we started podcasts at the same time. I broke up with my girlfriend and was like, I should start a podcast.
Now it's time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone else needs to hear my opinions.
Yeah. It would have been too much inconvenience for her. But
Sure.
How was it? What does your husband think of people, of comics coming in and out to do
a podcast?
Podcasts and like just random. There's so much like random bullshit with comedians where it's like, especially because I'm fairly central, it's at least 2 or 3 times a week someone will text me and be like, hey, I got 30 minutes. Can I stop by your house? And I'm like,
what should I do right
whatever.
now? Yeah. Do you have a couch? Can I sit on it for half an hour?
Exactly.
It's been a real wild journey because my husband is not a comedian, but he does work in the arts. He's a carpenter for TV. So we both went to theater college, not together, but he knows like artsy weirdos, but they're like different types of artsy weirdos. Important. Yes. So he knows like some dirtbags, like not comedian dirtbags, but he's familiar with the genre. So it wasn't like a huge shock, but I think he always has like an interesting time because some comedians are like really, really nice to like spouses and girlfriends and boyfriends.
Sure.
And some comedians, obviously, once they find out that you can't like get them anywhere, they're like, I don't really need to meet you or talk to you. But he is a white man with a beard. So they're like, are you a comedian? And then they're like, oh, wait, no, you're not.
It's part of the uniform.
It's part of the uniform. He's gone to festivals where people have gone up to him and been like, great set. Hey, great set.
How do I get that? All right.
It's crazy. I'm like,
I've never had that, and I did perform. That's
yeah, he's just got the vibe of somebody that maybe should do comedy. But it's been a journey. I think he was like, when I started, he was so skeptical of the whole process, but also like wanted to be supportive. But he was too supportive. Like he came to some open mics and I was like, this is painful for me.
Yeah.
And then people would do crowd work at him at open mics because he's the only non-comedian there. And he's just like a smiley guy. And I was like, we can't keep doing this. Like you have to, and it's funny because it used to be, and it's also partially when you start out, you have so few shows that you're like, I've got a show next Thursday.
Yep.
And you get really pumped up. So he used to come to every show, like every single show. And now I could not tell you the last time he came to a show. Which is fine. Like, I don't care, but it's just like, I literally couldn't tell you.
It is funny how that happens where you get so many people that are so excited when you start, and that's when you suck. And now that we're actually like pretty good at this, they're like,
I'm busy.
I'm kind of busy. I'm like, yeah, but we got like 3 people from Comedy Central on this one. This
is
isn't just a
good
bunch
show.
of fucking idiots that like showed up that night anymore. And they're like, I went to so many of them. And
I'm kind of burnt
the wrong
out.
ones.
Yeah. And it's like, I guess it's my fault because I invited you to the wrong ones, but I promise there's so much better now.
I didn't invite anybody. I was they needed to beg.
Yeah.
Or what you could always do with, because this was with coworkers, they'd always want to come.
Yeah.
If you just never give them a specific date, they're like, "Oh my God, when's your next show? I want to come." You don't say like Thursday. You're just like, I have shows all the time. You just come whenever you want.
Figure it out.
They will never figure it out.
They'll
they
never
want
pursue
you to tell them.
Yeah.
So now that I have like the weekly show, it's easy to be like, this one, come to this one.
You can come to this.
Or if we book far enough ahead, I'll like text people and be like, all right, that's a really good lineup. You should come to this.
You should come to that one.
Like bring a date or something.
This will be
good.
Yeah. My husband once, more than once probably, but once invited a bunch of my family to a show that I did not want anyone to come to.
No.
It was like an audition for a club
It's like a proposal.
Yeah, I was like, why did you hide them in the bushes? I was embarrassed about this. It was so bad. It was like a 2-hour show with like just a parade of people. Yeah, exactly. It was
brutal.
so
my cousins came to that.
It's so rough.
My family thought I sucked for the next 6 years until literally like a month ago when they came back.
Yeah.
And they were like, you're so much better. I was like, you guys came to the worst
You don't
thing.
even know. Yeah, and you came to the worst possible. And it's so awkward to like meet them after and have them be like, cool.
They were like, that one guy was all right. And I'm like, yeah, that was the host.
And exactly. And I'm always wondering what my husband is saying to them in the interim time, like when the show ends and they all have to leave and file out. I'm like, is he telling them like, oh, normally she's better, or like this show was bad, or is he saying nothing? Like, is he embarrassed that he invited them? Like, I don't really know what goes on because I'm too embarrassed to ask. Like if I leave a bad show,
you can't.
I just don't want to know.
You just need to look at each other with quiet acceptance that you both regret what just happened.
And be like, should we have dinner? Let's go have dinner.
This is really good dinner. A lot of drinks.
Yeah.
We're going to need a lot of drinks.
Exactly. And it's such a weird thing because I started stand-up when I was 30, so all my like day job people were like, that's like weird
pretty
new...
late for
it's pretty late.
New York comedy. I think like in other areas, there's a lot more people that are like, oh yeah, well the kids are a little older, so yeah, let me try some. I've always wanted to try this.
There's an open mic every Tuesday. Let me see what happens.
New York is really like most people are like, I just graduated college and I want to follow my dreams because I'm important.
Exactly.
Making fun of myself. But
like it was an interesting because when I started, I was 30 and everyone else was 23, and I was like. They thought I was the oldest person in the world. And I, like, my day job, I'm not working nearly as much anymore. Now I'm kind of working like a week a month, but it starts at 6 a.m. So I have to get up at 5 a.m. Yeah, TV is like very, I paint scenery for TV and film, and it starts really early. So, like, I could never go out after. Like, I didn't make friends. Like, I'm friendly with everybody I started with, but we don't have this lifelong bond because it wasn't like I didn't go to drinks after.
No,
I didn't go
in the trenches.
Yeah, I didn't go
the
sit at the diner for 2 hours. I'm like, can I go first? And then I have to leave because I need to get any amount of sleep before going back to work.
TV sounds like a really fun job. I don't know how TV people balance because there are a few. Like, I don't know if you know Jack Finnegan. Yeah, but he works for a morning TV show, and he does some of the graphics for it. But he has to get up at 4 a.m. to go do the graphics for this TV show. He gets back to his place at like 11:30 or noon. And then he takes a nap, and then he does shows,
he goes and does shows,
and then he sleeps for like 3 hours. And then I was like, dude, you're going to die. Yeah. Like that, that's not sustainable, man. And he's like, I gotta
it's
do
the
it.
Only way to
I'm part of
live.
the union. I can never leave.
That's like, the thing. It's a union job. It's a good job. And you're like, I pushed it to the absolute limit. And now even when I do work, like I worked 3 days a couple weeks ago, start at 6 a.m., go till 4. So it's a 10-hour day. And then 3 days in a row, I had 2 shows a night. So I was getting home at midnight and sleeping for 4 hours and then going back to work. And I was like, I used to do this all the time. I did this before COVID all the time. And then COVID made all of us realize that, like, we don't want to live that way. And now I'm also 3 years older, and I'm like, I just can't fucking do this anymore.
It's one of those, like, once you stop, it's not coming back.
No. No, I'm out of practice. I'm like,
getting back into practice would be a monumental feat at that point.
Basically impossible at that point. So it's a wild ride.
Brutal. Well, tell me about the TV. Like, what exactly do you do? You said you do costumes, like set design. What are we talking? I don't know anything about TV. I just know a few people that work in it, and they're like, no, this person does this actor's crazy, all this other stuff. But like, for the most part, I don't know what a day-to-day is. I don't know. So wherever you want to go with this.
Yeah. So I just do scenic art. So I went to school for scenic design, which is deciding what things look like. But scenic art is just executing. It's just painting and putting up wallpaper and doing things like that. So I don't make decisions.
So it's like a contractor job, but for the
fancy contractor. Yes. I used to joke. I have a BFA, which is like a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Sense.
Yes, exactly. Like I own 2 chainsaws personally. That's a separate thing because we have some land upstate. But like, that is the vibe. I wear Carhartts non-ironically. Like people are like, it's a new brand that everyone's into, and I'm like, no, I've owned this.
Remind me of the people back home.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like I went to a very fancy college, or I went to Boston University, which is not like very fancy, but I got a BFA, and it's like I'm at a trade school. I go and put on Carhartts and like do labor here, but it really depends on the show because like what I train to do more formally is like paint backdrops for theater. So like the background on a piece of fabric, it flies in and out, it looks like a scene. And I have done that. Like I've done it for the Metropolitan Opera. Like I've done it professionally. Cool. But the money and the insurance and the everything like that, there's just way more money in TV. So that is typically what I do. And I've worked on a lot of cop shows, which are boring.
Yeah.
And just painting like victim apartments. I do a lot of that.
Sure.
Do a lot of like painting a room and like just looking around your apartment. I'm like, okay, so if the victim lived here, they'd probably like put some takeout containers on your desk and be like, he was working until this time. And then we make a fake puddle of blood on the floor and like
fake puddle.
yeah, and then like age the finger, like put finger marks on all the light switches and the doorknobs to like make it like
all right,
that kind of thing. So there's that, and then there's like skills like wood graining and marbling. Like I can paint things to look like other surfaces. So there's a lot of that.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's like it is a skill, but it is a trade. It's just like doing this kind of thing. And I worked on Succession for a couple years, and that was a cool / weird job. I did seasons 2 and 3 because there's not a ton of painting in that, but they're
no, I was gonna say it's mostly just buildings in New York.
It's just
and
real
like,
places. But the thing about Succession and buildings in New York is you have to build at least one set an episode in order to get the tax incentive from the city. Oh. So even if it like exists, we had to make one thing an episode.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
you didn't make it like a table or whatever that they all
no,
sit
like
at
a full
type
room.
deal?
Like so. Okay. So do you watch the show?
Yes.
So the first episode of season 2, there's like a 2-minute scene where Shiv and Tom are on their honeymoon on a yacht.
Yeah.
It is not a real yacht.
What?
We made a 4-room yacht. You see 1/4 of one room. We made a full bathroom you never see. We did all this wallpaper, all this painting, all this like fake molding, all this crazy stuff. You don't see half of it. At least half of it.
You built a full yacht.
The 4 rooms of a yacht and the front. So the outside, the exterior.
It wasn't actually
It wasn't a floating boat.
Okay,
no,
I was
no,
like,
no.
what the
No,
hell?
no. That
Like,
was green screen.
That
but
just seems inefficient.
Yeah,
honestly,
no, it was.
to make a whole yacht.
Yeah, but it was inefficient. It was like so, but and like the room in the later in the second season when they go to Washington and they're being interrogated.
Yeah,
I did all that wood grain. Like I painted those desks that they're sitting at.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's
so like
awesome.
that room is not real. That was shot in Long Island City in a warehouse. So it's like a lot of
that
Succession
to me
is
makes
real.
Sense.
Yeah.
Then, like we can't rent out Congress.
Exactly.
So let's,
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make a fake one. So that one is. That's the kind of job where people don't fully get what I do until I like sit down and watch it with them, and I'm like, see that? That's fake. I did that. That's what that is.
TV magic, Hollywood magic.
But yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
show is, I mean, that show, we did an episode for Kendall's birthday, the big party.
Uh-huh. Where they come out of the vagina.
Yeah.
Did you build the vagina?
No, but my friend did. My friend did.
All right, I'll take that.
She had to make a model for them to like measure off of to do the balloon part. So she made like a little model of the legs. But
oh my God.
yeah, no, I painted the treehouse that he's in, and
treehouse
I did
is very cool.
a couple other things. I'm trying to remember.
It's not the vagina.
It's not the vagina legs.
The
It's
treehouse
not-
is very cool.
It's not. There's also a couple rooms that you never saw. There was like one of his classrooms, and it's like 300 bottles of Jack Daniels on like chalkboard and all this like all these desks. There was all this stuff. That set was like over $1 million, and like
Jesus.
Yeah, we did this crazy texture on the wall that I swear to God, it gave me carpal tunnel syndrome, and you don't even notice it. It's matching because we filmed half of that in a stage, like in a studio, and half of it at this place. I think it's called the Yard, and it's like a performance space.
Oh, I've heard of the Yard.
Yeah, so all the scenes where they're outside or you see them from a window, that's the Yard, and then everything where the legs are, where all the fake rooms are, that was in a studio.
Gotcha.
So we had to paint the walls this like gray to match the Yard, and they were like, we have to do the texture on the walls or they're not going to notice. So it's like 2 big spackle knives doing this like repetitive motion. The walls are like 25 feet high. I did that exact motion of putting this texture on every single day for 10 hours a day for 4 weeks straight.
Jesus.
And you don't notice it at all.
No. I
At
can't.
all.
I remember the yacht. I remember the treehouse.
Yeah.
I remember the vagina. I do not remember the wall spackle.
You never will notice it.
No, but you know what? If it had looked bad, then
You would've
people would have
noticed it.
noticed it.
Yes.
And that's the problem. Like,
Yes.
I've done construction before, like framed basements or whatever, and it's always fun to like go down and like, because you always recognize where you fucked up.
Exactly.
Like the little stuff. But nobody recognizes it unless it's awful.
Exactly.
And so when you've got that mentality, you spend so much time trying to make it perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to 40 hours of spackle jobs.
Yeah, 4 weeks of it. It was, But that job was cool because people watch it. Because for years before that, I worked on a show called Blue Bloods, and nobody.
Ton of people watch Blue Bloods,
But like
just
old
not anyone
white
you're
people.
friends with.
Not anyone I'm friends with. White Republicans in Ohio love it. But people would be like, "Oh, you work in TV? That's so cool. What do you work on?" And I'd be like, "Blue Bloods," and they'd be like. Oh, cool. It's so cool. So like, yeah, it was nice. Succession is what I bring up when people are like, oh, what have you worked on? I'm like, you've seen that. That's a thing people like.
That's a prestige TV. Even if everyone's heard of it at this point.
Exactly.
I do get that because this neighborhood is used a lot for filming, and the new cop show East New York.
Oh, I don't know that one.
They've woken me up 3 separate times. One like twice here, but then I was staying at my girlfriend's place in Bushwick, and like there was a ton of commotion outside, like 5:30 in the morning, and I was like,
"What?
Jesus!"
Is this?
And I look outside, and they're like filming right outside there, and I go out when I leave at like 10 o'clock. I'm like, what are you guys filming? They're like, East New York. I was like, you motherfuckers are following me.
Yeah.
Stop coming. Go to the street over. What are you? Why? Oh, it's driving me nuts. And then to your point, nobody's seen it.
Nope.
Nobody's watching this show. There's no point in any of this happening.
Somebody is, but it's not anybody that you know. Not anybody that you care about.
Now I'm like kind of thinking I need to get in the shots. If they're gonna keep busting
use
into
it as a credit.
Yeah,
like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Like go out already in a cop uniform, be like, I'm here. Like, where do you want me?
I'm here.
Where do you want me?
It's crazy. My old college professor used to live across the street from Carrie Bradshaw's fake apartment. So like the character from Sex and the City where she lived. And I remember he was telling us, well, first of all, he hated it, that was true because they were shooting there all the time.
Oh, the Friends apartment, or even like the old Taylor Swift apartment.
Oh, yeah.
The
and
West
like the
Village
tours
is just
are going
so
by.
many tourists looking at it, like taking photos, screaming, all this other stuff. Yeah.
And like his husband started like a blog before blogs were a thing in like 2005 and just took pictures of people taking pictures on the steps, like pretending to be Carrie Bradshaw. But then he was like walking by one day and they were like, do you want to be in the movie? Like, we're filming the movie today. Do you want to be in the movie? And he was like, sure. And then they were like, we need you to walk by. Or he walked by once and they were like, great. Now we need you to do it every time because you were in that one shot. And he's like, oh, I'm not doing that. Like, no. No. And just like kept walking. I was like, forget this. And I was like, oh my God.
His vendetta was so strong. He was like, he didn't want to be in the movie.
Apparently
How long
not.
would that have taken? Like 45
an hour,
minutes?
Yeah, tops. He was like, nope, can't be bothered. I was like, wow, you really stuck to your guns on that one.
So why weren't you in the newest season of Succession?
It just kind of timed out. I had moved over to because that job took a really long hiatus for COVID. Season 3 was almost done, and then they took a big hiatus. And then by the time they came back, I had found another job to be on. So I just kind of hopped over to something else because FBI. Is the show I've been working on, which is another cop show, which is I've never watched an episode of it. I have no idea.
Nope.
But like when I worked for 3 days a couple weeks ago, we made a murder basement, which we do all the time.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's kind of fun. It is kind of fun.
Is that kind of what you were describing? Like when you were like pointing at stuff in my apartment, like we put the fingerprints over here. Like
if
what
there's
goes
a
into
murderer,
a murder room?
Yeah. We do a lot of victim apartments, a lot of weird murderer yarn walls. That's my favorite.
Ooh, the yarn
doing
wall.
Like a yarn wall.
Do you piece it together so it would actually mean something, or are you going all willy nilly up there?
All over the place.
That would be the greatest serial killer thread if you, the set,
was a killer
actually, and left the clues on your set so that people
I would listen to a podcast about that.
Do we just come up with a fictional podcast? I think we might have just come up with the next great serial podcast.
I would watch it. I would listen to it. Whatever.
Did you track down all your credits on IMDb to figure out where all the killers
are? How many people? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. That would be. There's something there.
This podcast is over. You can find us everywhere you found this one.
We're moving on to the murder show, Murder Yarn Hour, and that's going to be successful. But yeah, we do a lot of weird, like the murderer lives in this basement or they've never left this apartment and we got to stack the pizza boxes and make them look dirty and that kind of thing. And But it kind of all ties in because one of my first jobs after college was I was doing scare attractions, which they call them scare attractions, but they're haunted houses. But they don't want to be, the people who make haunted houses for a living don't want to call them haunted houses for some reason. They think it's like a derogatory, I guess. So they call them scare attractions. But
my assumption is that a scare attraction would be scary as fuck.
They're pretty scary.
Okay.
They're definitely next
level. It's one of
level.
those where like they're gonna grab you and you're gonna feel like you're actually about to be murdered type deal.
Yeah, you're paying a premium.
Never been to one. I've been to the websites. I'm like, that would be wild. I think it's for someone else.
I think I'm good. I don't want to do them either, and I worked on them. But I spent a month in Chicago, a month in Mexico City, and a month in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia with the same company over like 6 months. And we did, Chicago was all the Saw movies. So we recreated a bunch of the Saw rooms and stuff. And then Mexico City was a Terminator themed laser tag.
Oh, that'd be
fun.
Well,
that was super fun. But it was
I would
just
do
like
that one.
Yeah, I would definitely play that. I was sad I had to leave Mexico early and I didn't get to play.
Oh no, you had to go to Malaysia.
I had to go to Malaysia. Yeah.
No.
But in Malaysia we did Malaysian like folk scary tales, which was really fun. Like they would tell us their like things they were afraid of in like old stories, and we recreated that. And like some of them were really weird and silly, and some of them were like genuinely terrifying. Like there was a room where there was like 35 fake mummies like standing, just like arms tied, and then one of them was a real person.
Hell yeah.
So you like stood there for a few minutes just like staring and like being afraid to walk through, and then one person would just be like like just like move right out to the side, and you were like like just like terrified. But when we were working on that, me and my best friend were there for a full month, but they didn't shut down the rest of the attraction. So we had to work, we had to listen to the spooky music all day. All day, 10 hours a day.
Would you rather listen to that or Katy Perry like you work in a grocery store? It's Miley Cyrus these days.
Honestly probably Miley Cyrus, because
really?
this was an 11-minute loop. It was only 11 minutes.
So repetitive.
If it was a longer loop, I think I could have done it. And like we memorized it. Like we were woo, like we were just like doing every part of it. But it would play all day. And if we wanted to get to the waters, like wash our paintbrushes or anything, we'd have to literally walk through the attraction. So we'd have to like time it out. We'd have to like see them walk by and then like run across. But every once in a while we would forget to look because you're just like working, you're wearing headphones, you're like whatever. And a few times I like bumped into Malaysian people like as they were looking, and I'm like a foot taller than most Malaysians and white, and I have gray hair, and they would see me and be like, like, I'm like, I'm just a person. I'm not part of this.
It's the paintbrush killer.
Exactly. The same killer who's doing the yarn and all the sitcoms.
Yep.
But
all right, I like this addition to our podcast.
Yeah. It's all coming together.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like fun. So
it was crazy.
So what do you like to work on the best? Because you've scare attractions, cop shows, prestige TV, like what pros, cons, what are we talking here? Because like prestige TV, everybody knows it. That's gotta feel good.
It does feel good. It is the most stressful, I would say.
I was gonna say.
Because it's so particular, and like both of the private jets on the show are just tubes of a jet in a stage. So like it's not a real plane, obviously, but that like we would get notes that were like one corner of one edge of the shiny part of the chair needs to be slightly less shiny, or like you have to get in part of this light fixture and paint this tiny bit black. So you have to carry like a thing of paint and walk through this jet that you know is incredibly expensive and not spill anything and not knock anything over and not fuck it up. And that was super stressful just because because they're so rich. It's not even like they're just wealthy, normal people. They're so unbelievably rich in the show that you know that nothing can look less than perfect. Like it has to be.
It does.
And like a lot of TV shows have pretty low standards for their scenery, like especially cop shows. And so the first week I was on Succession, I was coming off of 3 years on Blue Bloods, where my boss did not give a fuck.
Fucking, there could be a can in the chute.
Yeah, they're
from,
like, we don't care.
Homeless person jerking off over here,
Exactly.
and it's like, he's part of it.
It's part of it. It's dirty. It's New York, baby.
Yeah.
But like this was like so stressful, and I remember doing something. I forget what it was, but I did a perfectly adequate job. It wasn't like a fantastic job.
Yep.
It was like, and I was also like, in Blue Bloods and a lot of other shows, you do things quicker. It's like it just has to be done by the end of the day. Usually, whatever your task is, no one's thinking you're going to take many, many days to do it. But Succession was a real like change for me, because you could work on something for as many days as you felt like it needed to be for it to be perfect. And I remember like my boss like laid out all these different things for me to do, and then I did them all in one day because I thought that's how much time I had. And he was like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna redo most of this." Like he was just like, that's not perfect. And thankfully it wasn't anything where I'd like wasted a bunch of materials or money, or like thankfully. But I was just like, oh, okay, like cool.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. But like Succession also, everybody was super nice, so it was just a really great place to work. All those actors were like very chill. It was not,
they're all like theater people. They're not they're not, they aren't like child actor. I guess Roman kind of is. But yeah, most of them are just like old Shakespearean
and like
actors
happy to be there.
They're like, I'm on TV. This is great.
Exactly. Like I was talking to the guys who play Cousin Greg and Tom, and they're just like chill. They're just hanging out, being like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm painting this marble because it's the outside of this door." And they were like,
that's
"Oh,
awesome.
that's cool," So that was like. That was a very chill, and that did kind of feel like theater, which is what my background is, which theater is like, that it was a big change, theater to TV, because theater for the most part is a like, everybody's coming together, I respect what you're doing, you respect what I'm doing,
right.
And then you get to TV and everyone's like, you're one of the dirty people. Like, we don't talk to you, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Tight. Like,
There's
I'll be
no behind
over
the
here.
camera in theater, but in TV. Yeah. I have a few thoughts. One, very glad that Greg and Tom are cool.
Chill.
I had heard that Greg was. That makes sense for Succession, that it is all about perfection, though, because that's how people want to see it. Because like there was an article in The Atlantic, which is like a floofy magazine for like highfalutin
folks.
Falutin, thank you. I couldn't think and they're like talking about the fashion in Succession, and it's like, when you're branding yourself as like the ultimate prestige TV for these ultimate rich people, those are the types of things. So like, even those tiny little, I don't think anyone would have noticed if a chair was too shiny, but like,
no, but that's what we're doing.
That's the type of shit that
I spent like
reporters are gonna
5 days
look at.
on a box. There's an episode where they get their own wine. Tom and Shiv like made their own wine, and he's trying to talk to her about this wine, and she's talking about something else, but it's this wooden box and it has this little emblem on it. And I spent like 6 days on it, sanding it with like 800 grit sandpaper, which is basically a piece of paper, just like gently like aging, and just every day coming in and being like, oh, we're still working on this box.
Still
like
working on the box.
This is what the most important thing is that's going on here.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't worked in TV, but weirdly enough, my first job in the city was for a tech company that really didn't, like, they weren't making a ton of money. There wasn't a ton of pressure. Like, it was a very fun place to work, because it was, you
Relaxed.
get 3 hours of work done, and then it's just kind of like, watch YouTube at your desk, and people would hook up their Netflix and all this other stuff. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool, tech, like, it's
this is a great
fun.
job.
Everybody does this. And my next job, I went to another company, and I should have put this together because my salary literally doubled. That this was going to be a little more.
Yeah.
It wasn't even more responsibility. I didn't have a problem keeping up with the work. I had a problem with the appearance that I was working. It's more of like a cultural attitude.
You have to keep up the facade of like, I am a
yes,
busy worker
like,
person.
We are all here on a mission to work. Where the last company was like, are you done? All right, cool. What are you watching? Like,
no worries. We're chill.
I was eating. So like before at the first place we would have like a corner of the office had like beanbag chairs and tables and shit, and that's where we'd eat lunch and all hang out, and it would take like an hour. It was very chill. And then I go to this next place and I was like, all right, well, everybody seems to eat at their desk, so I guess that's what we do here. I'm getting paid more money, so sure, whatever. So I'm eating at my desk and I pull up a YouTube video on the computer, and our like head of sales, like number 3 in the company, walks behind me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Eating lunch."
Yeah.
He goes, No, what are you
What's
watching?
this?
And I was like, "Oh, some highlights from the football game." He's like, "Should you be watching that?" I was like, "What?"
I'm on
and
my
it just
lunch.
like,
Yeah.
didn't even. I was like, I'm eating.
Yeah.
And he's like, "We don't do that here."
That's not something
I was
that
like,
happens here.
What?
Yeah.
You don't like 15 minutes. You don't mind. You care if I watch 50 while I'm eating. Like I'm not. I had headphones on. It wasn't like sound or whatever, and it blew me away at the time. And now that I've gotten older, it's like, oh no, there is like an appearance thing to this.
Yeah.
Because it's like if I do that, then the next person does it for 20 minutes, and then
Exactly.
and then it's like, all right, okay, what is the culture? I ended up getting fired from that job because I couldn't fit into the culture. But that your story is, I'm very impressed that you were able to like get into that new culture so well, because I was not. I
was
had
a journey.
bad time at the super strict culture.
Yeah, it was definitely a journey. And I remember at one point, I forget what I was working on, but I like cut my finger and I had bled out like 3 drops of blood. And thankfully it didn't get on anything, but it made me realize like how intense we were, because I was so worried about getting blood on something and not worried about bleeding. Like I was like, don't bleed on the set. Like I'm just like freaking out and running around. I'm like, yeah, this is a weird way to think. This is not an appropriate like
Your
mindset.
hand is off, and they're like, "What's this hand doing on the
Exactly.
God? Is it Emily again? Jesus!"
Exactly. I was like,
leaving her limbs around.
Yeah. So as much as I enjoyed doing that show, because people know what it is, it was nice to be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go make a murder basement and spray some dirty water in this corner.
Leave
and
your hand wherever in the murder
who cares?
basement.
Exactly. It adds to it. No big deal.
Did you get paid more in Succession? Like,
No, I'm in a union, so we just get paid. We just have rates.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, which is good in a way, because I don't
Sure.
have to negotiate or whatever. But it is like, no matter how, I mean, they're slightly different every network, but it's like by $1 an hour. It's not anything that's like significant. So it's not enough to affect like what job you're going to try to get on or work on.
So Mark Mylod was like, "We're getting the most out of these fucking union
Exactly,
workers."
exactly. And I get that too. I'm like, I'm getting paid pretty well. I get it. I don't know. It was just like a high tension all day. It was a harder job. I will say that it was a harder job to do stand up after. Like working on like FBI and Blue Bloods, it was like fucking whatever, dude. We're leaving early most days. I have my mental energy to myself. I can listen to a podcast, or I can think about my jokes, or if I think of something, no one will be mad at me if I take 2 seconds and put it in my phone. Whereas like Succession and a couple other jobs I've been on, that pulling out your phone to put a joke in it would have been like, what are you doing with your phone? Because like the thing about painting and like applying wallpaper and things like that, you don't need your phone. There's no logical excuse to be like, I'm looking up paint colors. It's like, no, there's no reasonable reason.
Watching a scene from another episode to make sure it matches.
Exactly. It's like there's really not a good excuse, so you just have to not do it. And that so Succession was like, and that's tough too, because like especially you're promoting a podcast, promoting shows, to only be able to look at your phone every 2.5 hours, which I know sounds insane. We should all be able to take 2.5 hours away.
But for comedy, you have to be
hard.
paying attention to it. You will
hard.
miss spots if you don't check it every 30 minutes
Exactly. And like not promote, and then every break was very frantic. So it was a harder show. And like FBI, part of the reason I went back to that job is the boss there was really she had been to some of my shows. She's just a supportive person, and she was like, yeah, if you need to take a Friday off because you get a job, like as long as you give me like, a week's notice, like totally fine. Whereas Succession, it was a much bigger deal, and like I don't want to be like they never let me, but it was tougher, and I had to plan better, and I had to just like, it was trickier. So that it was one of those jobs that like, and everybody that does comedy or is trying to transition from one job to another, you hit this like breaking point where you're like, do I give up some sense of security to be able to keep doing comedy, which on paper you might be like, why did you leave that job to do this $100 spot in Connecticut or whatever? But you're like,
$100?
I mean, sometimes it's happened. It's not all the time.
No.
But it is just like, when do we cut the cord, and when do we say, well, I'm going to make a lot less money, but I can live on this much money. So I'm going to try to do that.
Everybody wants the oh, I blew up and now I'm on a TV show. And you get it every once in a while, Marcelo Hernandez or someone who's just like, oh, I auditioned for SNL and now I got to quit everything else. I got this and this is my career now. And that's awesome. But for the most part, that's not how it goes. And so having the ability to do part-time stuff is very critical for comics. Because a lot of them walk dogs. And stuff like that, where it's just you got to pick up other stuff. But with my day job, and I still do it full time. I'm not even making close to enough money on comedy to even consider leaving right now. But the way that I kind of built my career was intentional, where I could very easily consult from anywhere. Right. And if it's going to supplement the comedy career, that's where you can get all right, well, I made $35K off comedy and I made $45K off of this. And this suddenly
equals a reasonable amount of money.
And then I'll have 9 roommates and I can live in some basement in Crown Heights. And then put that together. Can we talk about like what's going on with TV right now with the writer's strike and whatnot? So it is, what's the date today? The 23rd?
May 22nd.
Something like
second,
this.
22nd.
This is going to come out mid-June. So there maybe is some like updates, but the writer's strike does not seem like it's going to end anytime soon.
No.
If ever. Like this, I'm big into tech. I follow a lot of like AI stuff. I think the writers are right.
Yeah.
I fully support them. I also work at a real company and understand that executives are fucking dumb sometimes.
Yep.
And they will do anything to get the bottom
line the lowest.
Yes. Yeah. The cost number to be as small as possible. And if they get a whiff.
Yep.
So you tell them, that's how I've been thinking about it. You tell me where I'm off or like what's actually happening.
I think you're pretty correct, and I think it's an interesting thing because you're coming at it with a knowledge of AI or like an association at least with AI. So many of my friends in TV didn't realize that AI was even the issue. Non-writers, like people in other tech parts of it. And when I say tech, I mean technicians. So that's what I mean. It's like costume people, set people, whatever. They just
work in
assume
Excel. They do things with their hands.
Physical things. So they all just thought it was money related, and it is. There's definitely money to be talked about, and I think the big issues are AI and then the mini rooms. So there's like the mini writers' rooms. Oh, okay. So this is a huge thing too.
I've heard about this concept. I had never heard it before. I heard like one little blip. So yeah, whatever, like go in depth on that one if you want.
So basically, now they're doing these things called mini rooms where they hire so it used to be, years ago to make a show like Friends or Cheers or something. It's 22 episodes a season. It's probably 10 writers in the room.
Sure.
They're getting paid residuals. They're getting paid to be in the room. They're getting paid to work basically 10 months out of the year, and then they take 2 months off and then they go back.
And those people, real quick, they made a lot of money.
They made so much money.
If the show
was successful.
Like the Seinfeld writers or the Friends writers or whatever, like multi-millionaires because they're making money off of all of the reruns on every channel.
Yep.
And that's what they negotiated was like, hey, we're going to get a cut every time it's aired on every single. So when you think like, all right, every local Fox station is airing it, and then Comedy Central sometimes for
later
Seinfeld.
At night they'll play it. It's everywhere.
Like,
so they get residuals. So that's a whole other thing. So now if you make a show and you get paid for it to air once on ABC and then it goes to Netflix, as a writer, you don't get paid at all that it got sold on Netflix. So now people are watching it. So we used to consume, like I remember when I was a kid and I came home from school, it would be like Friends is on at 5 and 5:30, and then at 7 and 7:30, and then at 10 and 11. So that's like so many residuals. But now if somebody watches, New Girl 6 times when they get 6 episodes after work or whatever, no writer's getting paid for that. So that's a whole other separate thing. They don't get residuals at all.
But the mini rooms,
So who does? Is it just dead?
It's a flat fee to whoever created it. So
NBC,
Fox or NBC or whatever. Yeah, they get a flat fee and that's it.
Wow.
And so they don't even know how the show's how much it's being watched because the streamers don't have to release their numbers, so Netflix, they don't know how it's going.
Right.
But so the mini rooms are instead of hiring 10 writers or 8 writers or whatever it is for the whole season, they hire 2 to 3 people for like a month, and they have them break the season. They have them figure out the story arc of every episode. And it might not be a full script. It might just be like, okay, it's a 10 episode season. This is the big action that happens in episode 7. This is kind of what we think would happen for the rest. And then those people are fired or let go. So they worked for a month and they got paid for a month, but they don't know the next time their opportunity is going to come around. And then 1 or 2 people write out the season and stay with it for the season.
It's just like a Mad Lib.
Yes, exactly.
It's like someone makes the Mad Lib, and then a couple more people come in, fill
it
in the
in,
gaps.
a couple more, and it just keeps getting kicked down the line.
So instead of
and it's
10 people,
less and less people,
it's 5 people that are all getting paid less
for
because neither
less
one
money.
of them.
Yes, they're
actually,
getting paid at scale. They're getting
Wow.
paid a shorter amount of time, and then the other element to it is that all these people got hired a couple years ago to meet diversity quotas and ideas. Like, everyone a few years ago was like representation matters, and it's always mattered, but it people didn't do anything about it until 2 years ago.
Decided that it mattered.
Yeah, 2 or 3
people
years ago.
already knew. Businesses decided that it mattered.
Exactly. So they brought out all these people of color, all these trans people, all these people to represent all these different things.
Yeah.
And Netflix at one point, 2 years ago, laid off almost all of them, but buried it in a big news week. Like they just kind of were like, just kidding. So all these people like moved to LA, got apartments, left other jobs, so there's all these unemployed people. So in my opinion, it's going to be at least the summer, at least.
Yeah.
And like, there's jobs still happening right now that have been written, but some of those jobs are being picketed anyway because people are just picketing anything.
Yep.
And even though those jobs are not in violation of any contract or in violation of any union, they're still being picketed. So like my husband right now is working on a show rather that has been written, but it hasn't been filming. So no one's been picketing because they've been building. They've been like prepping for it. But they start filming tomorrow, and they're probably going to get picketed, and then they're probably going to get shut down. But they don't actually know because our unions are different. I'm in a union called A29 that's part of IATSE. So IATSE is like the very big umbrella union for all the technical people.
Okay.
And we can't strike in solidarity with this union. No one asks us to cross a picket line. So if they're outside picketing, we're not expected to work because we believe in unions. We're not going to, whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's no picket line and we choose not to work, then we're doing what's called a wildcat strike and just striking for the sake of striking, I guess. It's in our contract that we're not allowed to do that.
Right.
So we don't need to cross picket lines, but we can't strike in solidarity. So unless our contract ends, but our personal contract doesn't go up for another year and a half. So they time out our contracts so that they never all meet at once because they want to keep something going.
That does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but the actors and the directors are all up at the end of June, and the actors just authorized a strike. So what happens in the union is you vote to whether or not you would authorize a strike if the negotiators decided to strike. So you're just saying, if it comes to that, I think we should.
Yeah.
And IATSE a year and a half ago, we didn't strike, but we got like a 97% approval for striking. The writers were like 99%. The actors are voting right now. I think it's going to be very high as well.
Yeah.
Because they're also worried about AI and money and all of that sort of stuff. So I have a feeling it's going to get pretty spicy. I'm not really sure how it resolves other than writers backing down for 3 more years and then maybe tabling AI for 3 more years. Because that's the thing, the contracts aren't that long.
Right.
So maybe we'll strike all summer and go back to work for 3 years, and then they'll talk about AI again in 3 years. But they haven't spoken again since the strike started, and it's been 5 weeks. Like, they haven't been negotiating this whole time.
Oh, boy.
They haven't been talking at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the AI part of it. So, everybody's heard about all these tools like Chat GPT and all this other stuff, but from what I've heard, and I want you to counterpoint this if you've heard something different, is essentially the studios, and I'm going to include Netflix and Amazon, the streamers, the business
aspect of it.
Aspect of this is kind of like, oh, well, Chat GPT is really good, and I ask it to give me a spec
Story
script
or whatever,
something for a TV show, and it's B+.
Yeah.
Like, and so the writers are saying, like, fuck you, that's our money. Like, that's to your point, TV's where the money is.
Yep.
And these studios are thinking, well, it's not good enough yet, but if you
We're
give
close.
it another year,
We're
give it another
close.
year and a half, they could probably just be writing all this stuff up. And so the mini rooms and the streaming numbers, like, that's been an issue for a while, right?
Yeah. The mini room's probably 3 to 5 years. It's been becoming more and more of a problem, but AI feels pretty new as far as it feeling actually like a threat. Like, because ChatGPT came out, and I have so many friends that are like, not TV, they're not asking it to write a story, but they're like, oh, I need to send an email to my landlord, so I asked ChatGPT, or like I had it explain my medical diagnosis, or whatever, just crazy stuff that I'm like. And like I asked it to write something for me the other day out of curiosity, and it got really repetitive. I remember I was like started to ask it a couple comedy questions just because I was like, what if it has a funny response,
Yeah.
And it was very repetitive and very not helpful. But it is learning, and my very little understanding of AI in general is the more we use it, the more knowledge it gains. So it's just going to get better.
Theoretically, yes. How I would describe ChatGPT right now is I think it's the equivalent of a mediocre to bad intern.
Gotcha.
Where you have to tell it exactly what you need, and then it can kind of do. But if you're like a little off, it's going to do it incorrectly.
It's going to be really off. Yeah.
I had a list of cities that company headquarters were in, and I wanted to know the metro area because like there's 95 Springfields or whatever.
Right.
But one of them was in Livonia, Michigan, which I'm from Michigan, so I know that's a suburb of Detroit. I wanted it to spit out Detroit, and I said, hey, what is the metro area of all these cities? And the one it gave me, I put in the city of Livonia, and then it just put Livonia metro area. And I was like,
that's not
what I want. So I had to specify the metro area of the nearest major city, and then it figured out Detroit. But it's still like there were 4 or 5 of those little instances where it was just the way that I explained it was just a little bit off, and it really felt like I was talking to a 17-year-old or something, someone who doesn't understand the broad scope of what I'm trying to do, and it just takes everything at face value.
And that's the thing is like what I think AI could spit out now and then have a writer edit, because I do think that they think they'll be like, the AI will make a rough idea and then we'll have a real person make it sound like people said it.
Right.
But I think
that's one person.
Exactly. I think that AI could make like kids television or like really bad teen dramas. Like I feel like they could watch like 10 seasons of like Riverdale and things on the CW and make things like that, and I think that's passable, but they're never going to be able to make things like Succession. Like
Or White
AI,
Lotus is the one I was thinking
White
of.
Lotus, exactly.
So weird.
Although the problem with White Lotus is it's so good and it was written by one person. So everybody keeps being like, well, just get more Mike Whites. And it's like, that is one man. We are not all Mike White. Like no one else is writing all of White Lotus by themselves.
That's true.
But it's just it's enough for the studios to be like, well, I don't know why you need 10 people. Why can't you be like this guy?
It's so... What I think the other thing to add to it is formulaic TV. So
yes, it can make formulaic TV.
There was a writer for The Atlantic that said, write me a TV show script about 4 firefighters, and there's a twist and 2 romantic things, and this person gets trapped, and he was like, yeah, spit it out. And it's like, it was actually pretty good.
Yeah,
it's
passable.
Because it's seen so many firemen shows.
Exactly. It can make what I like to call laundry shows, which is like what you're putting on while you're doing your chores, while you're cleaning your apartment.
It always ends up okay.
Everybody's fine. Right around minute 40, there's some sort of disaster. It can make you a Law and Order. It can make you a Chicago PD or whatever. It probably could, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And like, I don't like the union side of me is like, but we shouldn't let it because everybody needs a job. And then like the shitty comedy part of me is like, well, you guys should write better stuff and go find something else to do and like let the robots make like Law and Order. Who cares? But I hope there will still be TV made like Succession and things like that. But I don't know who's going to do it and how they're going to do it and where the money is going to end up.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of that will stop AI is the general public deciding that they don't want to watch AI TV shows. And I just don't see that happening for formulaic stuff.
And the problem
Kids
is like,
aren't going to know that.
They don't care.
You and I will sit here and go like, oh, this HBO show is written by AI. I'll watch the Mike White one.
Exactly.
Because I like him or
people or
Jesse
whatever.
Armstrong doing Succession or because I want to support people. That's also why I'm not as concerned about it for stand-up especially.
Yeah.
Where now you'll definitely have stand-ups who use Chat GPT to write their set.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a pretty monumental. I think people would care.
Yes.
Because with stand-up they want to relate to the person
and they want
on
like
stage.
Authenticity and they want to feel like they're watching something you're organically thinking of in that moment, even though it is written. So the idea of a robot writing it is just like next level betrayal as far as
I
like
could see
stand-up.
where like they could steal tags or whatever. But
Sure.
But the baseline I'm not as worried about. But to the general point, I don't know how to ask this. What is the writers union essentially saying besides don't do this or you'll ruin our lives?
So basically they were what they proposed, to my understanding, because I'm not in the WGA, but I have read a lot about it because it concerns me. But what I basically read was that they wanted to put like a hold on using any AI to write anything. And all they were saying is like, let's just say you're not going to do it. And again, the contracts are 3 years. So that is also scary because even if they say, okay, we won't for 3 years, it's going to be better in 3 years and it'll be the problem will come up again. But the counter offer from the studios was, well, why don't we set up a week or a monthly meeting to talk about AI technology, but not committing to not using it, not committing to anything. And the thing that the writers are, they're not entertaining that idea at all because in 2008, when the writers' strike happened, which was the last writers' strike that happened, it lasted 100 days. So basically the whole summer. The big sticking point with that strike was that all of the studios were trying to claim that things on Netflix should be paid a webisode rate. So like Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, these shows that are like prestige like House of Cards is like a well-made show. They were like, no, this is a webisode. We're going to pay you a webisode. So like even
Is that like $6?
Yeah, it's like nothing. It's like absolutely. It's like as if you were like, hey, I'm making a film on my phone and I need somebody to paint one wall. Can I pay you a sandwich? Like it's not. So that was shut down very easily, but that was exactly what the studios proposed was we're not going to commit to not paying you webisodes, but we'll promise to talk about it every month. Like the wording in the contract was exactly the same. It was the exact same offer. And they were like, no, because if we had let you pay us that rate for anything on the internet, we would not be like okay. And they were claiming then, and they're still claiming now, like in our contracts they were still trying to say this. They were like, but we're just the internet. And I'm like, find me one person under 40 who pays for cable. Like they don't exist. We're done with like we'll watch those shows when they end up on Netflix, but you're making the bulk of TV. Streamers are making the bulk of TV now. So you can't claim that you're like putting on a skit. Like
and the not to like I think the studios are in the wrong, but they are also kind of handcuffed by Netflix because they've made way less money off Netflix than they did Comcast and the other streamers. Or not streamers, cable traditional TV channels.
Right.
You know, CBS pays quite a bit more for Blue Bloods than Netflix would for their equivalent.
Whatever their original content is.
In a way, the studios are kind of stuck in the middle. Don't get me wrong; they have way more money than they are letting on and all that. But it boils down to eventually it gets back to the streamers.
Yeah.
And Netflix and all the streamers kind of got out of 2020 as being seen as the good guys or whatever.
Right.
But they're just as, in terms of business practices, malicious as Facebook
100%,
and Twitter and all these other tech companies that have had no regulation. They just give us a product that
we like, and it's comforting.
Start a riot yet.
Exactly.
So it's like,
exactly. And like, if you talk to an older writer or somebody who's been in film for like 20 years, 30 years, their argument is that Apple and Netflix and all these companies shouldn't even be in charge of art. Because it used to be that all TV studios were owned by people who, because TV and movies it's not that old. It's 100 years old.
Right.
It's a relatively new business in the grand scheme of things. So it used to be owned by people that were like wealthy, eccentric weirdos who wanted movies to be made. And now every major studio is owned by a different company that just cares about the bottom line. Like Apple TV contracts are some of the weirdest contracts I've seen technician wise, because they don't fully understand what they're trying to do. And they're just trying to pay us like they pay the Chinese people who make the iPhones.
Sure.
And we're like, we're Americans and unions. You can't do that. But it's just a whole
props
different.
For trying.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just like a very different thing that we're trying to, and I think it's true of most art forms now, is that everyone's trying to get to the bottom line. And it's like, why can't we get the AI to do the dumb tasks and pay people money to make art?
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to work out for the artists in that way, because like even the actors, you think, oh, okay, well, if they can write stuff, you still need actors. And you're like, well, I mean, CGI is pretty fucking good now.
They've made young Harrison Ford for Indiana Jones.
Yes, exactly. Like you can create new people that are not based off anything. Well, technically they're based off everything,
right?
Which makes them not based off anything.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna use that to create a show, then ChatGPT could write it, and Midjourney could create the person. And like I said, people like you and me will watch the human stuff because we want to watch the human stuff, and we're fucking stubborn. But the laundry shows and the kids shows, exactly like you said, are
the shows that are shown in waiting
trouble.
Rooms and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
The only thing I could think of, the benefit of AI, if the government doesn't step in and say, okay, we need to tax the shit out of this
talk about
stuff.
this. Yeah.
The only benefit is, I believe, going to be for individual artists, like comedians, like painters, because AI isn't very good at generating very good art.
Authentic art. Yeah.
Authentic. That's a good way to put it. Like even that song that came out that used Drake's voice, people were impressed by it, but like nobody's putting that on their Spotify.
Because it's a robot.
Because it's a robot.
Yeah.
And so I think for individual artists, it could be great. Because it's going to take care of all the business stuff.
Right.
If it could write your emails to clubs for you, if it could, you could automate an AI that just says, hey, find the email address of every single club owner in the United States, independent club owner, and then write an email saying, these are my credits, I can be here between these dates, and send out 100,000 of them and see who gets back to me. And then you just made a tour yourself right there, and then find the cheapest flights to that time, and then pick the dates, the best dates based on all the, and like that's the shit that would take comedians years,
months and months and months.
Theoretically, you could do that in AI in like 10 minutes. So I think it's going to automate a lot of the business bullshit, the stuff you would have a manager for, the stuff you would, not an agent, because that's like who you know.
Whole other thing, but somebody dealing with your money and your time and your flights. Yeah.
Right. So for individuals, I think it's going to be good. And my only hope is that the AI is so good for everyone across the board that like you and I could make a high production TV show because of AI, something that would be as good as an Apple TV show,
right.
but it's just you and I, and there's so much of it, and everyone gets like a small slice. We don't need Apple, we don't need Netflix, because someone will put it online. Anyway.
And that's the thing about a lot of technology is it has opened the door to independent creators to be like, but I can do it with my phone, so I'm going to.
That's what TikTok is.
Exactly.
TikTok's the most popular platform, and it's all people just fucking around. Netflix is all mad because they're losing money to TikTok.
That's crazy, but it's true. I mean, I'm on it too, and
all the time.
It's crazy. It's everywhere. Wow.
Anyway, we're at an hour. I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, we hit a lot of topics.
Doom and gloom to end the
very
podcast.
positive.
I just I have hope. I don't know. We'll figure it out, or it'll be the wars. I don't.
We'll see.
The wars.
We'll see. Yeah, right.
World War I, World War II, and the wars.
And then the water wars.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are coming.
Oh man, Emily, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on every platform there is at The Funny Walsh, and then I have 2 podcasts of my own. One of them is called Yeet the Rich, and it actually ends up to be a lot like this conversation.
Great.
Where me and my husband talk about really wealthy people and the horrible things they've done, and it's light.
Works on Succession one time.
Exactly. Decides that the uber rich is my enemy. Made a podcast about it. We should do a fictional one about the Roy family. That would be pretty funny.
That'd be very fun.
That'd
you
be
could have
fun.
AI write it for you.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, honestly, I should get AI to write the script part. But yeah, there's that. And then there's Alone at Lunch, which is more of a chitty chat type of podcast. We talk to comedians every week about a time that they felt like the odd one out. So that is fun and light and sometimes dark, and that's a good time. And then if you're in New York, I have a monthly show at Pete's Candy Store every first Tuesday of the month called the Golden Ticket. So yeah, any of those things.
Awesome. Follow me at Corey T Comedy on all social media. And if you're in New York after you go to her show, come to a comedy show every single week at Ferns. We're getting you on it soon.
Yes.
We had a date and then something popped up.
Yeah.
But we'll get you on this
I had
summer.
to go get paid $100 in Connecticut.
Oh my God.
It was
Well,
the
we were
whole
only
thing.
going to give you 10. So
Yeah.
this is, that was a good deal on you.
Good business decision.
if you're coming to the show and you liked this episode, you want to see Emily on the show you're coming to, send me a DM on Instagram. We'll get her on that episode. And then let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.